In the cold winter nights of Boston, in the depths of the dark streets brought by Prohibition, there was an Irishman named Thomas Tommy Sullivan, someone who spent his childhood in the muddy streets of South End, now the leader of one of the city's most dangerous robbery gangs. On January 15, 1920, this man, who would sign one of the biggest armored car robberies in history, would change America's crime history forever that night in ways he never expected. So how was this robbery planned, and what events brought Tommy Sullivan's life to this point?
My name is Thomas Sullivan, but the streets know me as Tommy. The story I'm about to tell you is what happened during those cold winter days of 1920. The story of that night in the dark heart of Boston that made me both rich and cursed. In those days, Boston was shaken by the chaos brought by Prohibition. The alcohol ban had divided the city in two: honest citizens and those like us who made money from the laws. I had grown up in South End, the child of an Irish immigrant family. My father worked at the docks. My mother did cleaning work. I had chosen a different path, chasing easy money, feeling the scent of danger in every breath. In early winter 1920, I was sitting in that dark tavern on Beacon Hill. Snow was falling outside. Boston's stone streets were covered with a white blanket. That night I met Vincent Vinny Torino, Italian-born, coming from the depths of the organized crime world, a man who always had calculations in his eyes. He wore an expensive suit, had a gold ring on his finger, but there was cold determination in his gaze. He had offered me a big job, robbing Brink's Express armored car. Brink's Express was Boston's most reliable money transport company at the time. Their armored vehicles roamed all over the city, filling bank vaults. Vinny's plan was simple, but dangerous. On the night of January 15th, we would stop the vehicle following their route on Commercial Street and take the money inside. But I couldn't do this job alone. I needed trustworthy men. The first person I went to was Jimmy O'Brien. Jimmy was 22 years old, a brave young man who knew the streets well. With his red hair and freckles on his face, he had grown up in Dorchester. When I made him the offer, his eyes lit up. He was now moving from small-scale theft to large-scale robbery. Our third man was Robert Bobby McNeil. He worked as a security guard at Brink's Express, but Vinny had bought him with money. In his 40s, Bobby with his sick wife and small children, Vinny's offer was more than a year's salary for him. Even though he felt guilty, he had decided to take this risk for his family. During the cold days of January, we were preparing our plan. Boston's freezing cold was seeping into our bones. Vinny had given us the map of Commercial Street. We had learned that the Brink's vehicle followed the same route every evening at 9. Bobby was giving us information about the security systems. When the evening of January 15th arrived, early darkness had fallen on Boston's streets. The snowfall had stopped, but the cold air was cutting our faces. At 8:30 we took our positions on Commercial Street. While Jimmy and I waited at the corner of the building, Bobby would come with the vehicle. Vinny was controlling the situation from a distance. My heart was beating wildly in my chest. Every minute seemed to last forever. At 9:10 we saw the Brink's vehicle. The black car with its heavy metal vault had parked on Commercial Street's stone pavement. Bobby got out of the vehicle and gave us the signal we had planned. Jimmy and I started running. The cold air was burning our lungs, but adrenaline was flowing through our bodies. When Bobby opened the door, there was an incredible amount of money inside. We started filling the bags. Our hands were trembling both from excitement and cold. But then something unexpected happened. Marcus Wright, another security guard from Brink's, was passing by the vehicle. When Bobby saw him, he panicked and said we needed to explain the situation to Marcus. Marcus was in shock. He couldn't understand what was happening. He was an old man, probably thinking about his family. Jimmy tried to calm him down, said we wouldn't harm anyone. That night, running through Boston's streets, with our pockets full of money, part of me was proud, and part of me was scared. This money would make us rich, but at the same time it made us targets of the police. Vinny was waiting for us at our meeting place. There was satisfaction in his eyes. When the money was counted, the amount each of us would get was even more than we had expected. But the joy of our success didn't last long. The next day the robbery news appeared in Boston Herald, with big headlines. Detective Frank Morrison had taken over the case, an experienced and determined man. As days passed, we were enjoying the money, but had to stay constantly alert. Jimmy sent money to his family. Bobby covered his wife's treatment. I rented a small apartment in South End. Vinny had advised us to save some of the money, because he knew they wouldn't give up on this case. Boston police were sweeping the streets every day, using informants. Morrison's team was methodical and patient. They were following every clue, examining every small detail. By late March, Bobby's behavior had changed. He was constantly tense and worried. He said the police were asking him questions. Jimmy, meanwhile, continued spending money with youthful enthusiasm, starting to attract attention on the street. In the first week of April, Morrison's team caught Vinny. I'll never forget the moment of capture. He was hiding in a room behind his family's grocery store in the Italian neighborhood of North End. Morrison raided at dawn with his own team. Vinny was a strong man, had survived years in the organized crime world. We knew he wouldn't talk, but we felt the police were getting very close to us. Boston had their eyes on every corner. They were tracking our every move. After Vinny's capture, there was a great silence in the city. The Italian neighborhood was filled with police. Every house was being searched. Organized crime organizations retreated for a while. The streets were calmer than usual, but this calm was deceptive. Everyone was waiting for the next move. During those days I couldn't sleep at night. In my apartment in South End, I watched Commercial Street from the window. I constantly remembered that cold winter night, those moments full of adrenaline. The place where the Brink's vehicle parked, Bobby's panicked face, the moment Jimmy excitedly filled the bags. The money was still there, but I could no longer enjoy it. Every knock on the door, I thought the police were coming. I had changed my daily routines. I stayed away from the taverns I used to go to. I didn't meet with my acquaintances. Walking through Boston's narrow streets, I constantly looked behind me. I tried to act like an old Irishman working at the fish market in the harbor area, playing the role of an ordinary citizen. But there was constant fear inside me. I knew everything could end suddenly. I had buried part of the money in the garden of an old church in Back Bay. At midnight, I had dug under the snow, put it in a metal box. I hoped to use that money one day, but now, thinking about it, I understand how naive I was. Escaping from an experienced detective like Morrison was almost impossible at that time. Jimmy's family was also worried. Police were constantly hanging around their house in Dorchester, asking questions. Jimmy's mother was an old woman. She could understand that her son was in trouble. When Jimmy came to me, he said his mother cried every night. His siblings were being bullied at school. The luxury that money brought had stolen his family's peace. They caught Jimmy in May. I'll never forget that day. When I read the news in Boston Herald, my heart almost stopped. It was on the front page, with the headline "Young Robber Caught." They handcuffed him at his home in Dorchester, in front of his family. Jimmy's mother was sobbing. Neighbors were watching from outside. The young man's dreams suddenly fell apart. That night, I saw Jimmy's face in my dream. The expression of surprise and fear at the moment of capture wouldn't leave my eyes. The next day, Jimmy's brother Patrick found me. He was a 16-year-old young man, very attached to his older brother. His eyes were teary. He told me Jimmy had sent a letter from prison. In the letter, Jimmy expressed his regret, blamed himself for the harm he caused his family. "Tommy, I wish we had never gone to Commercial Street that night," he wrote. Reading those lines, I felt guilty. I had ruined this young man's life. Bobby, realizing he couldn't take it anymore, decided to surrender. One May morning, he came to the door of Boston Police Department. He was ready to pay the price for what he had done for his family. He went to the police and told them everything, gave our identities, explained the finest details of the robbery night. Bobby's confession was the key that solved the case. Morrison had now put all the pieces together, seen the whole picture. After Bobby's confession, a major operation began in Boston. The police department had devoted all its resources to this case. The streets were filled with agents. Every piece of information was being taken. Every clue was being followed. Irish neighborhoods were especially under tight surveillance. Many people I knew were interrogated. Questions were asked about where I was. During those days I took long walks at Boston Harbor. I remembered the places I came with my father in my childhood. How innocent and clean life was then. I had already spent most of the money. Expensive clothes, luxury meals, ... But none of it brought real happiness. Morrison's team finally found me too. On a hot day in June, they caught me while I was walking at Boston Harbor. That day the sun was shining, boats were swaying in the sea. It looked like a normal Boston day. But for me, the end of everything was coming. As the handcuffs were put on my wrists, I was thinking about that winter night. That moment on Commercial Street, the weight of the money, my friends' faces. At the moment I was caught, Morrison looked at me. There was an expression of triumph in his eyes, but also a kind of sadness. "Tommy Sullivan," he said, "we finally caught you." His tone was stern, but respectful. Morrison had been following me for a long time, had learned every detail of my life. He knew about my past in South End, everything about my family. While being taken in the police car, I was seeing Boston's streets for the last time as a free man. Every street we passed had a memory. The houses where my childhood passed. The park where I had my first fight. The shop where I committed my first robbery. They were all staying in the past now. When I was interrogated at the station, Morrison sat across from me. There were files on the table, photographs, documents. These were the fruits of his months-long work. "Why did you do it, Tommy?" he asked. There was genuine curiosity in his voice. I told him about my father's hard work at the docks, how my mother was exhausted from cleaning, what it meant to grow up in our neighborhood. Morrison listened, took notes, but there was no accusatory expression in his eyes. "You know," Morrison said, "I also grew up in South End. I walked the same streets you walked, but I chose a different path." Then I understood that Morrison wasn't just a police officer. He was also a child of a poor family like us, but had looked at life from a different angle, made different decisions. During the court process, everything came to light. Boston Herald covered the hearings on the front page every day. Jimmy, Bobby, and I were given different sentences. Vinny received a heavier sentence for organized crimes. Marcus Wright testified as a witness, told that night in the finest detail. During the years I spent in prison, I constantly thought about that night. Our Brink's Express robbery had gone down in Boston's crime history, but all it brought us was regret. The money had brought freedom for a short time, but left behind years of captivity. Now I'm an old man. The memories of those days are still clear in my mind. That cold winter night on Commercial Street, my friends' faces, the weight of the money. It was all one of the most important moments of my life, the night I was both most proud of and most regretful about.
Thomas Sullivan's story reveals the dark face of the Prohibition era. This real event that took place in 1920s Boston sheds light on both individual tragedies and the social conditions of the period. The power of money, bonds of friendship, and the price of crime all are intertwined in this story. While the adventure experienced by Sullivan and his friends earned an important place in America's crime history, it also reflects the survival struggle of people of that era.